everybody. My name is Jay N. Stanley. I'm from Rutgers University. My work I did at Sandy Hook is actually a part 2 of my master's thesis. My first one I showed on my poster, which was done in Belize on a karstic system. So the second part was just a homogeneous quartz sand. It's about 60 meters deep because we drilled it a few years ago. So we wanted to see how we could use topographical data and ground penetrating radar to investigate periods of growth, decline, erosion, various events that may have happened along one single 350 meter transect with a 400 megahertz antenna and a 100 megahertz antenna. So the main question for this was, can we identify these features using sensing, remote sensing and geophysical data? The area that I'm in, which I refer to as the armpit of America, is affected pretty bad by global sea rise. New Jersey, Sandy Hook area is actually sinking because of isostatic rebound from glaciers, and everywhere else is kind of rising up around it, but there's a lot of heavy erosion from various storms that constantly come in from hurricanes up the Atlantic. So we're trying to put everything together and see if we can track this in various stages from Cape Cod all the way down to Maryland at some point moving forward. But this is our first attempt to get some kind of clarification. So this is Sandy Hook. There you go. So this is Sandy Hook. It is a spit located right here. When this was originally built in the late 1700s, is a lighthouse, and it has grown over 1.5 miles since then. This is the Hudson Raritan Estuary Bay. This is the Hudson River. This is the Raritan River. This has changed multiple times over various glacial ins and outs, highs and lows. And this is our study area. This is North Beach. It has actually shown most of the growth that have happened over the last 20 years. So this is why we chose it. So this is close to the, so we originally we tried MSSW, multi-analysis seismic waves. We were kind of limited because COVID came. So as I did this one first run, it was covered in ice and snow. We were literally scraping it off. And every time I hit, we were using active source, 16-pound hammer with 16 geophones. Every time I would hit the aluminum plate, it would sink into the ice. So we scrapped that. Then we did the 400, and then we ran the 100, which we had to kind of improvise and tie it up with rope because it was such a pain to pull, and the sand would go really packed to really soft, and it was problematic, but we made it work. This is our transect line, dune to swash zone, right up to the wet break. The 3 hours, they're pointing seaward. Each of them is an area of interest that we pulled. We did not use the area with any triangles because it was kind of just a repetitive data, and there was really nothing interesting there to interpret other than just make notes of. This is my first transect. This is 0 to 70 meters. Originally, when I did this, I did A, B, C, and D all in separate sections, but I found it looked really good when I kind of stitched them together. So this right here is A and half of B. So this is the absolute base of the dune. We're actually standing probably a foot or two up on the dune, and they are really very picky and strict about you even touching the dunes on Sandy Hook. So you can see this top line. In this presentation, I'm going to show you, In this top line, all my these top profiles are in nanoseconds, and all the bottom ones are in meters. Just, I find that some people don't like looking at meters. Some people, geophysicists like nanoseconds. So uninterpreted, I mean, there is just so much going on. This was almost pre-processing. I barely had to touch this at all to clean it up. There's just so much to look at. And honestly, the first time I looked at it, I was just kind of getting into GPR, and I honestly just did not know where to start because there was so much going on. But I had to figure it out. So I broke it down into 3 sections. The top layer is pretty easy. We see these prograding shore faces headed seaward. The upper top are kind of a mishmash. I think these are more like changing probably daily with winds. We get a little bit of retrograding or duneward progradation, if you want to call it. And the second layer, which actually isn't really a layer, it's actually we interpreted it as a lens, a freshwater lens sitting on top of the aquifer, which is right here. So we have this like lens type feature, and we came to that conclusion because you can see everything's just prograding right through it. It's not really a difference in stratigraphy. The third layer is still clearly these prograding shore faces, but we start to get these heavy chaotic reflections, these high amplitude reflections. So interpreting them as rip-up class changes, and from storm fronts that come in there pretty steadily. It was really big with the topographic data is that you really kind of got to see, and because this is all flat, but exactly where some of this movement is based off of these lows and highs throughout the course of the profile. We follow this lens to the next slide, which is going to be B and C. So we see that at B into C, sorry, it's probably going to happen a lot, coincides with this low right here. And we get this break off, and it looks like there was a period of just a fast, heavy movement of prograding shore face. The layers seem pretty thin. So, it looks like there was a lot of high energy at this point when it was truncating. And then we get this huge trough bar system. You can see in here some of these hyperbola, they're kind of building up on top of each other. And we have this longshore trough in the sandbar system. And you can see this trough right here is 86 meters to about 116 at the top of the sandbar. So it's really big. And then, you have a back and forth. If you have this duneward progradation filling this area, then we have another trough bar system popping up here. And then we notice the Stalweg at the bottom, which you see in a lot of rivers, which means that there's a high energy of movement ripping through here. And it's pretty significant based on other ones I've looked at, and pretty fast moving rivers, high energy rivers. Also, just to point out, each one of these colors every 5 years, we kept there's a log done with it was first at LiDAR, now they use like RTK, and these are the shore faces, the end of the shore, per every 5 years. This is currently us right now. So you can see the periods of growth are pretty significant over the last 20 years. So we skipped that one area up here because there wasn't really too much significant. And then we noticed that, like you saw in the last one, this pinch out right here of that lens, we no longer see the lens. We just see this layer of saturation. So that being, it's moving up closer as we're moving closer to the beach, it's starting to get a little out to the water, starting to get a little more saturated. So our water table is moving up. We still notice these rip-up class or these chaotic reflections. They are consistent through 350 meters of profile. They're just constantly consistent. And then you see a lot of movement, duneward, seaward, duneward, seaward. Within the lens stays pretty significant. This again right here coincides with this little low right here. And we have this trough bar system. You can kind of see them building up. They're not as significant as the last one. Then when we hit the brake, because I have a 3-wheeled cart that we have the 400 on, I drive it right until the water hits it. So we get this it's completely saturated. So we lose all our signal. We get complete attenuation. Our next one, we used a 100 megahertz antenna, which Rutgers is thankfully grandfathered in because somebody donated it like 20 years ago, and it's been sitting in a warehouse that I tripped upon one day and decided to start playing with. Same transect, same location, North Beach, dune to swash. So this is, I believe, 60 meters, or 65 meters of beautiful, beautiful, one single 2D transect. Nanoseconds meters. I mean, and this is just great. So we lose signal up here because of the lower frequency. So this is kind of where the 400 comes in because it replaces that area. But we see these huge prograding surfaces, shore faces, and then we start to get this like inlet kind of channel looking feature. And then you start to get some progradation over it again. And prior to that, it built up on what just looks like Shore, just offshore. Just interpreted it down here, so it's kind of exactly what I just explained it as. This offshore, we're not sure about time, how long it was there. It's probably less, it was more than 20 years ago. We could go back 100 years or something like that, but I'm completely making that up. But it's based off some kind of logic. So anyway, so a lot of proradiation. The 100 was way better than we thought, and we got up to 20. We got 20 meters with this. Looking at this, it does look like it's a little truncated. So if I would have knew what I knew now when I did this 2 years ago and collected this, I probably would have tried to, increase my time, my cutoff, and to see what I get. So probably that'll be something we do in the future. All right, so things that we have really identified was this one feature I showed you with the 400. This long shore trough system, these rip up class. We see these really steepening dips. The rip up class, the hyperbola from the sandbars is very noticeable. They were too big to do any kind of interpretation with as far as post-processing to try to get a depth range. And then, the trough with thou wag, it was pretty clean. I felt like it was easily distinguished. It was really easy to identify. You probably know intro to geology and, flip through some pages and do this. So it was not that difficult. So I got really lucky with the data that we collected because it kind of just did its own work. So that last picture I showed you, this is a textbook facies model of a longshore trough and bar system with a beach in the background. We have our beach, and then we have it's a huge tidal area, and it's a pretty significant change. I wish I had numbers for you, but this is what it would have looked like. This is not Sandy Hook. This is something we just found that it was the best image that we could find that really put together what you would see in a textbook to what we found. So again, the data was really generous to us, and we got a lot out of it. So the purpose we did the 400 and the 100 together, so we could do something called nesting. This is where we put the two together. You can see that the exaggeration on the profiles, these shore faces, these prograding shore faces are a lot different than the top, but your cone is a lot bigger at this depth. And we're pretty sure that if we were somehow able to, kind of put them in the same orientation, that they would just connect with everything that we have up here. You can kind of see it. This is the exact same 0 to 36 meters. So this is directly on it. So this area kind of fits in this area. And then still trying to figure out a way that we can, make this a little bit more tied in and make it a little more cohesive to the eye, for people who just don't get it. I've seen it. I've talked to a couple of people who still try to put it together, but it took me a little while as well. So that was it all went way better than I expected. So the biggest issue with the 100 was attenuation. The image I showed you before, that was the best length of that transect that we got. Most of it was attenuated. We got these little intervals where we would get half of a profile, but it was so attenuated underneath that it was hard to make any kind of real interpretation. So I basically skipped to the end. So the last one we had, I said it's 65 meters. This is where it ends at 68 meters. Then we get another, I think at like 200 meters, and it actually sits on one of the highs, but anything below that barely higher level, it's completely washed out. And attenuation was pretty much the end. We collected all this in fall. I'm gonna say like October, November time. So you do have a lot of rain coming in still. And we tried to do it post, it's a national park, it's Gateway National Park. So you get a lot of tourism there. And we collected pre-COVID, like it was just before COVID happened. So there was still a lot of, the beach gets really compacted in the lows. So it tends to hold water. So anything bigger than we found like 4 meters, we start to get heavy attenuation. So probably the best time to go is springtime, just before storms start coming, probably March. So we'll go back and we'll do some more. So moving forward, I'm gonna try to make this a first chapter for a PhD. My second what we're looking at is that storm track that we see from zero all the way from the dune all the way to the swash. We want to see if we can track that regionally. So maybe as far as Cape Cod, Massachusetts, all the way down to Maryland. We're going to hit about 7, 8 different beaches. That's the plan. A lot more 3D modeling, so we can actually see the size of like these trough bar systems and any other features that we might find in various other transects. And then we just want to try to connect to everything and see if we can build a bigger picture on a regional scale, Mid-Atlantic, Northern Mid-Atlantic bike. So that's it.
Any questions? Turn yours off.
Whatever.
Turn your mic off.
I'll turn it off.
Yeah, just a quick comment. A beautiful data set. I bet you would connect well with one of the folks in the Metals Hall who gave a talk on merging dual frequency data sets. They have a open source algorithm. It looks like that works pretty well for doing that merging to be able to create a uniform interpretable data set for you. So yeah, I think it would be, and he was asking for data sets to work on. So yeah, it'd be perfect. Yeah, beautiful data set. Good work.
Thanks for the talk. What kind of processing was done on the lines?
Did everything with Radan 7 from GSSI.
Sorry.
GSSI, Radan 7. I did all the processing with.
Yeah, no, more like what kind of like filtering or
or
migration?
I just did I usually just do a background, and I'll do an IIR, high-low constraint between like 600 and 200. I'll do my low at like 600 and my high at like 200. And I did it with this, but it really didn't change too much because it was fairly clean from the get-go.
But it was migrated as well?
No, I didn't migrate it at all. We did double check actually later. So during COVID, we did we were trying to do virtual classroom stuff, field trips and stuff like that. So we did go out into the field and we dug a trench, which I had a lot more that I could have sat here all day and did it for my master's thesis, which ended up being like almost 50 minutes, which is way too long. But anyway, so what we did was we dug a big trench. And so I'm curious on why in a homogeneous sand, I mean, it's quartz, it's all quartz, with maybe the exception of stuff getting washed on, maybe we get some plays, but it's a spit off the coast. So the biggest stuff you have is longshore drift, and it's coming from the south. And they're all the same. Everything in New Jersey is, these, if you're not right next to some kind of river system or, bay embayment area or something like that, it's just going to be quartz sand. So I wonder why we get such clean reflections on such a homogeneous medium, why? So we did dig and we found these layers. We dug about a meter, maybe 1.5 meters, and avoiding collapse constantly. We were able to get a couple pictures, and we see these layers of heavy opaque minerals. So we don't know where they come from, but if that is the source of us seeing our layering, that's how, the source of that. But if you go up the Hudson River, you have the there's a massive the Palisade Sill Formation is on the New Jersey side. So there could be a lot of heavy opaque minerals, coming out of that. Shot out to us from the Hudson, from the Bay Area, the Raton Estuary Bay Area, and maybe it's getting brought back in offshore every time there's a heavy storm. We're not exactly sure, but that is a further question of why we see such. I don't know if that answered your question. I feel like I ran off on a tangent there, but
Got a bit extra.
Right.
One last one here.
Thank you. Two questions. Did you do?
Sure.
Did you do any topo correction?
So
this is all in 2000, right?
so the topo was every 5 years since 2000. So it goes as far as 2020.
But did you collect your own topo?
Oh no, so my co-author, John Smeltz, he's a post-grad at Rutgers. He used to work for the USGS. which is, they're on Sandy Hook, they have an office on Sandy Hook. So the LiDAR data was taken by one of the people he worked with, a colleague of his, so it's all USGS data. But then he takes all the stuff that we do now with an RTK that he built himself. So it gets within centimeters of accuracy, so it's pretty accurate. So we're trying to, moving forward, we're kind of working on the same project. His is postdoc, mine will be PhD. But there's a lot of movement of sand around there. So we're probably gonna start trying to do that once a month, just to see how much change there is. It might be one massive, huge change every couple months, or could be gradual. But so yeah, we do take it, but only the last, I think 2020 he did his, and then the rest was collected by the USGS.
Have you done any topo correction of your GPR lines?
As far as,
I mean, like sort of set the traces along those topo lines and get an idea of like what sections of your stratigraphy are. kind
well,
of
so I did
different.
mention that that one area where that trough bar system was,
Yeah,
that is in the lowest point of our topo. And then if you really look, another low point was that really smaller trough bar, and that was actually just before this berm right here. So this area in here, that is that really short instance of a trough bar system, because the berm is not that big. But yeah, those two lows is where we see the little trough bar systems. So it'd be nice if I could actually feed this into a topo, and it would actually give me, exactly what we see, and some kind of scale to make it up. But we did look at it a lot, and you can kind of see we don't really see any kind of, with the 100, we don't see any kind of change too much. But we also only have data up to 60 meters or 36 meters or something. I mean, distance wise, 36 meters.
and I just food for thought, there was a talk this morning about auto detection of horizons.
Yes.
Stratigraphic horizons, who might love to look at your data.
Yeah, so my partner did the changes in beaches. So he did all that. He did that himself. So for a paper he did, and we just kind of put that into.
Jan.